meant to be broken.
I can see blue sky above it.
Limits.
Really important practice for us to protect ourselves.
There are none.
Can be paradoxically freedom.
Welcome to Emotion in Sound, brought to you by the Elephant Collective. I'm Adam Baird, and today, you're listening to the sound of boundaries. And oh boy, are boundaries interesting. Boundaries dictate so much of our behavior, and yet they don't even exist. I mean that's crazy. Listener, am I supposed to address you directly? Am I breaking a boundary when I do that? Or am I inviting you into something? I don't know. It's probably both. So let's explore boundaries in a musical context. And we should note that boundary doesn't just mean genre, right? It doesn't just mean this drum pattern or this set of instruments. What it refers to is our mental space and the expectations we put onto something. So let's set some expectations right now, just so that we can break them. Let's talk to Evan Reeves. Evan's good at this kind of thing. He's obviously a producer, he's the studio owner, and he's a songwriter. But we want to talk to him today about engineering, specifically how it applies to try to be guiding an artist through the process of recording their song without stepping on their toes. Evan, talk to me about boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, we run into that all the time here. You know, where does it cross over? Where I started was out in San Francisco at Hyde Street Studios, and I got to watch some of the best engineers and producers work in the world back in the late 90s. And as an engineer, when you were working with bigger bands and bigger egos, the engineer always made really certain when they asked a question or when they wanted to propose something to ask first, hey, do you guys mind if I propose this idea? Like, what do you think about this? Is that okay? You know, and if you jumped into the situation, you could get fired on the spot in these studios. So it's very tricky.
Really?
I think the boundaries changed a lot now because everybody's got their own home recording setup. So, you know, even with some of the people we've worked in here, the young guys who come in, the boundaries are way up. You know, everybody's a producer, everybody's an engineer, and it's always been my job to be patient with that, but at the same time, let people know that there are lines that can be crossed.
And so it's kind of an instinct thing?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like knowing the temperature in the room. That's kind of what it's about. And that's what, you know, producing is about. That's what engineering is about, is just coming in and kind of getting the temperature, getting the vibe, and kind of just knowing what hole needs to get filled, you know, what needs to be facilitated, because it really comes down to facilitation. So engineering and the boundary, I mean, we've run into it so many times in the studio where you're working with someone and it's so obvious what they need to do to fix a situation or what they could do to accentuate the positive of a situation. So in this studio, we tend to be pretty flexible with it, you know, but we'll ask first, you know, are you okay if I propose an idea? Because I am kind of old school about that. Sure. But the ultimate goal is to accentuate the positive, help the artist out, try to get them to leave the studio with something better than what they came in with. So if it makes sense to cross a boundary to that end, then in my opinion, it's worth it. Mm-hmm. But I have run into people who, when you did cross that boundaries, and they weren't always necessarily the most high-level artists, to be honest, they sometimes those people can really have a problem with crossing any kind of boundary. Mm-hmm. And that makes it difficult to work because you want to have a creative atmosphere.
Sure.
And collaboration is what it's all about. Like, that's my favorite thing about working in a studio is collaboration. So if boundaries preclude collaboration, then boring.
Boring indeed. That's why we're collaborating right now, and why we're collaborating with you, listener. That's fun. See, these boundaries don't exist, but also they do. It's crazy. You know what else is crazy? Trying to bring new music to listeners that meets their expectations while simultaneously breaking them. Radio DJs do this all the time. And their job has only gotten easier and harder as technology has progressed. So, in order to talk about that upsetting of all these boundaries, we're going to talk to Indra Raj, the music director over at community-supported radio, KGNU. Indra, what has technology done for these boundaries and for the DJs who are trying to break them?
I think it's hard to comprehend what that's like as the listener if you're not doing it yourself.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it's like nice to acknowledge that, I think. And our DJs are doing so much hard work. I mean, there's so much music out there that they could be playing. There's just like so much. It's like one of the great things about technology. You know, there are a lot of downsides, but there are a lot of great things, and that is the kind of democratization of the music industry, that anyone can create an album in their bedroom and put it online and have it be heard. And, you know, I think that's allowed for DJs and curators like the ones at KGNU to find these like obscure things and be like, hey, that's actually really good. And like, here I have this platform, I have this space on the radio dial where I can play that for people. And maybe someone else will hear it and be like, yeah, that is really good. I want to know more. And so, you know, we want to lift those underrepresented voices. It's so important to our mission. It is our mission.
Because we're only discovering more and more things by those combinations. And community radio specifically is really breaking down those boundaries. It's making those things way more accessible to way more people. And that is very noble.
Yeah, I mean, access to creative pursuits is like so important for human growth, I think, and becoming better people and understanding more about ourselves and the people around us. And yeah, you know, like doing radio, it's an art form. It really is. Like putting together a news piece, producing a news piece is an art form. It's a creative process, just like curating a music show is.
Absolutely.
And I really just appreciate that we are a learning space for people, our listeners, but also the people who are the countless volunteers who come in and learn about how radio works. They are like enriching themselves and their own lives. And we get a lot of people who have retired recently who are looking for a way to stay active. You know, it seems like a lot of them, it's like starting this like second career in some ways, you know, this like pursuit that they just get so into. And it's so exciting to see people get excited about that. And you can just tell that like their lives are getting better because of it. I think it's helpful to remind people that it's not an us and them thing.
Right. That,
you know, music is something that it's all around us. It's in the way we speak. It's in the way like the wind blows, you know,
yes,
all of these things are musical.
They really are. And in fact, what's that? I think that's some music coming our way right now. This is Theory for 30 with Adam Baird. If you don't like it, it's going to be over soon. But I like it, so it's what we're doing. I want to talk about how the major scale and the minor scale are just the same thing, but they start in a different place. Basically, your major scale starts on 1, and the equivalent minor scale starts on 6, meaning G is your 1, so E minor is your 6. If you want to use that in your songwriting, you can say da, 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 make it interesting, da, da, da. This has been Theory for 30 with Adam Baird. See how fun boundaries are, see how flexible they are, but also, they are important. If you want to be making music, if you want to be really moving toward anything in your life, boundaries are an important mechanism for determining how we spend our time. That's why we're going to go talk to Jules Schroeder. Jules is kind of an expert at spending her time in ways that benefit the life that she wants to live. Which sounds great, doesn't it? I think we could all use a little more of that. So, Jules, how do you determine your own boundaries? How do you decide what it is you're willing to do and what it is you can probably live without?
Yeah, so I think our brains, you know, we try to make sense of a lot of things that we feel, right? Because our feeling radar goes off, whether you call it intuition or instinct. And then our mind jumps in. And like, you know, if you even think about a time where you knew something was going to happen and then you didn't do something and then you got the logical proof later. Or like, you know, so that happens all the time. And I've learned to orient myself on my own internal system. I think we each have our own blueprint. And then I make decisions from that. And I'm willing to let the logical brain catch up next, which is freaking hard. Because a lot of times you're like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And then your brain's like, here's all the reasons you're going to fail, all the reasons why it's not going to work. And then we indulge our mind. And not that there's not value there, but it's known to understand the difference. And I think to your question, you know, something I would tell each person that's listening to this is literally take the next 5 minutes. And I want you to write out everything you're doing in your life, exactly where you're spending your time. So if we were a fly on the wall and we saw you waking up in the morning, like what's the first thing you're doing? Mm-hmm. Who are you talking to? How are you answering emails? Are you songwriting? Are you like, are you going on coffee dates? Are you having collaboration sessions? And put them all like on a piece of paper, set a 5-minute timer. once you do that, I would then literally go down that list and I would give each thing a ranking between 1 to 10 of like 0, and I don't know if I can swear, but like 1 to, okay, 0 to fuck yeah. So it's like what I talk about all the time, right? So is this like 0 being like, holy shit, I gotta stop right now, or 10 being like, this is a fuck yeah. And like, if you go down your paper, you don't have to overthink it. It's just literally assigning a number. And I've found when I've done this with a lot of different, creatives or entrepreneurs, that like we tell the truth to ourselves pretty quickly. And then from that, use that as data. Like, how are you spending your time? This isn't judgmental, but just look at it. And when I did this in my own life, maybe about a year ago, I noticed that about 80% of my time was doing things that were maybe about like a 4 or 5. And then the only things that gave me an 11 were like CrossFit and songwriting. And I was spending like 10%, 15% of my time there. And I'm like, what is up with my life, right? Like, if we're creating our life, like, so I really started reorienting my life, and it was just good feedback more than anything. And so I find having awareness gives us choice. And from choice, it leads to action. And from action can lead to intentionality, which can lead into alignment, which can lead into fulfillment, which can lead into success, which like leads into the whole fuck yeah, why we're alive, right?
And then we get there. Yeah, it's that easy.
So I recommend doing that exercise for those that are tuning in, and just getting profoundly related. It's one thing to conceptualize what's actually happening in your life. And there's another thing to just like rank it and use it as data. And I think it trips the mental filter and gives you more of a concrete piece.
Well, Jules, thank you for giving us that concrete piece. Concrete pieces are very helpful. In fact, they're usually essential in constructing boundaries. But what happens when we need to break those same boundaries? How do you transcend those boundaries in a live setting, whether you're sharing your music, your words, or your philosophy? That's a big question, which is why we've brought in Derek Brower to help us answer it. In addition to being a bass player and a performer, Derek is also a reverend. So Derek, when you feel that energy start to go, and the performance begins to take over, and you're performing to new heights, or you're saying things that sound way more articulate than you ever meant to say.
Or they're at least hearing something much more articulate, which is really nice. I love it when that happens. Great? I'm still, me, but wow.
But they think that I'm more than me.
Something.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing in the religious context. And I think that's where these two really come together, which is that, when it's a live performance and you're watching that risk being taken and that excellence being done, and there's still that I wonder if, I want, I desire, I hope, you're living in that moment, but in the anticipatory moment as well. Yeah. So you see the transcendence of the music, but the immanence of the people around you. And the same thing should pervade all of our religious experiences too. And I think that's where music has become such an important part of religion, has always been. Not only does it kind of trigger that, openness thing, but it creates that environment where we're anticipating a communion with the divine. We are not in control of this. We are, merely showing up and opening up our arms and going, please, I hope something happens. Yeah. Please, God, come and visit with me today. And then when it happens, it's much more powerful. And when it's scripted, sucks.
Because it's not, you want it to not be guaranteed. Because no one, no matter what any religious figure tells you, can guarantee that God's going to be there for you for this particular thing. You can say God will be there over the aggregate of your life, but you cannot guarantee that for any particular event you will be able to find a way to interpret, wow, that presence that showed up, that force in my life was there right when I needed to draw on it.
Yes.
And that's what makes it powerful, right? Is that you have to be open to it and allow it to happen if it's going to. But there is a risk of it not happening.
Very much so. And the ritual is in the Catholic Church, the ritual is the 12-bar blues in music. We lay down the same 12-bar blues. We play it all night long. And, but, you've been going through the communion, the Eucharist, the Mass, forever and ever. Amen. And it's one day that takes on a new meaning to you. And that meaning is transcendent, and that meaning is powerful to you. And that's why, you're doing why the ritual, because now you just did improvisation. There was an improvisational moment that is life-changing, or at least day-changing. You're like, that was really cool. Oh, yeah. And that's what I think, that's what I live for as a musician. And that's kind of what I live for as a spiritual person too.
It's really nice to have something to live for. Listener, if you need something to live for, why not subscribe to Emotion in Sound? It's brought to you by the Elephant Collective, after all, featuring all kinds of different songs, ideas, concepts, and, of course, a few tones here and there too. So, like, subscribe, share, favorite, heart, do all that stuff. I can't promise it'll make a difference in your life, but I can promise it'll make a difference in ours. So, listener, if you like the emotions and the sounds that are coming to your ears, the best way to make sure that keeps happening is to go to emotioninsound.org to make a contribution. But the boundary that is the end of this episode is still a ways off. In fact, we have a song for you. It's called You Can Walk Up There, and it's written by Darryl Purpose. Darryl is in the studio with us now in order to talk about the song, sure, but also just about the effect that walking has had on his life. So, Darryl, talk to me about how walking has broken down your boundaries.
Right. I went away to Las Vegas in when I was a teenager, and I became a professional gambler. And then I left that to go on a peace march, walk across the country, Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., and we played music. We had our guitars, and we played music all the way, wrote songs about why we were walking. It was something else. It was the first time I'd ever played a song for somebody.
Wow.
And the band got together, we wrote songs about why we were walking. I wrote a song called Ground Zero. And we played them at events, at churches and schools. And
you started writing songs in your bedroom? You said you got a guitar at 14.
Yeah, actually it was in the boat. We had a boat that my stepfather called it the hard way, the boat, and it mostly stayed in the garage. But I sat in it with the guitar that my mother had given me. I just got fascinated with the idea of who's making these songs up. And I, of course, realized that anybody can do this. I could do this. And,
you can.
And I began to write songs, and I began to follow songwriters. And for me, the key to the songwriting process is coming up with a configuration for me on the guitar, a certain tuning or a certain capo, and playing some chords, and then having something you want to convey, something you want to write about. Like this song that you're going to play today came from my new house in Nederland in Big Springs, looking out over the Continental Divide in this magic scene with these snow-capped peaks that seemed so amazing and so untouchable. And I'm standing there with a neighbor, and we're looking out there, and he'd been there longer than I had. And he turns to me, he says, you can walk up there. I was just like, no way, no way. It seemed so outlandish. But since then, I have walked up there.
Wow.
And so it took 14 maybe, I'd say. 14 years. It took 14 years to write that song. That guy said that to me. I don't remember his name.
Wow.
But I always remembered what he said, because I saw that view every day. And it took me 14 years to write it, but finally I just was holding my guitar, and it just started coming out, You can walk up there. You can reach the top.
What a cool thing to give you that insight, that permission, say, yeah, that's beautiful. It's really cool, right? You can go have that. You can go be a part of that, right? What a neighborly invitation.
I mean, up there in Nederland, you're at 8,500 feet, right? And you're not talking about the weather, like it's something up there, you are in it. And you understand that you're part of this as opposed to separate from it. Yeah. When I grew up in L.A., the park was over there.
Yeah, the environment is somewhere else, right?
Right, exactly. But here in Colorado, and especially up higher, I feel like you get to understand that you're part of this. We're all part of it.